and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Kate. Today, I'm joined by an incredibly multifaceted guest whose story is a masterclass in balancing high level professional success with a deep commitment to family and personal passion. Jo is a chartered accountant who has dedicated her adult life to the self managed super fund industry, driven by a mission to help everyday Australians feel confident and empowered about their retirement. But beyond her professional accolades, Jo is a mother of four and a grandmother of two who successfully navigated the challenges of early motherhood while building her career. Today, she's redefining what it means to retire through her use of micro retirements, all while training for triathlons and pursuing a master's in cybersecurity. We're diving into how she manages the pressure, the importance of backing yourself, and her advocacy for safety and longevity within the sporting community. So let's jump in. Hi, Jo, and welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. So we'll get started in the interests of time. So I'd love to start with a bit of your background. So if you can take us through the journey of what led you to where you are today.
Sure. So I guess maybe I might start with where I am today. So I am a mum of four, and I have two grandkids as well, two little grandkids,
Oh,
which
wow.
has happened very early in my life, but so did motherhood. I was 21 when I became a mum. My background is I'm a chartered accountant and have dedicated, basically my whole adult life to the self-managed super fund industry, which my driver there has always been to help just everyday mums and dads to feel more confident about their superannuation, to be able to look forward to a better retirement. And for myself to learn more and be able to connect with just everyday normal people, not the wealthy people,
Yeah.
but the people that potentially have fears over superannuation. When will I ever be able to retire? How much do I need? That kind of thing. So that's my professional, I guess, background. And what am I spending a lot of time on right now? I'm at a stage of life where I've enjoyed a couple of micro retirements already. So having worked in the retirement industry for a long time, I've not only encouraged others to take control of their retirement, but also thought and learnt a lot about planning for myself so that I can have times when I have career breaks, for example, be able to, travel or enjoy other passions or spend more
Hmm.
time with my kids as well. I definitely wasn't able to do that when I was young. I worked full time. I went to uni at night. I worked in accounting practices where the expectation was I did excessive hours. I've experienced burnout and all those kinds of things. Now I get to spend quite a bit of time training for triathlon, which is quite new for me. I've got to compete in a lot of different triathlon events and travel around with those as well, and just enjoy, I guess, life a little bit more with better balance.
Okay, that's fantastic. I mean, working full time is hard enough, but how do you manage to fit all that in
Mm.
and train for triathlon as well?
Yeah, so something I noticed pretty early on in life was that I performed a lot better when I was under more pressure. So if I have
Okay.
kind of like lots of hours in the day that I feel are free to do whatever, I feel like I tend to achieve little. I noticed when I was working full time and doing uni at night that I was getting like D's and HDs in my
Okay.
subjects. But if I dropped down to part-time work or even had a period where I was at uni full time, without those pressures, my results dropped, and I would be getting passes and potentially failing subjects. And so I kind of noticed that about myself, that having that pressure and those time limits where I don't have all day to kind of sit around thinking or procrastinating, I'm much more effective when I've got a bit of pressure going. And obviously, it's a fine line between having too much pressure and too much on your plate where you're overcommitted and you're just like
Mm.
bouncing from here to there and feeling like you're failing in every aspect of your life. Like, we don't want to push to that extent, but some pressure is really good. Um, And at the moment, I'm studying a Masters of Cyber right now and balancing that with my triathlon training, some work in my industry, as well as parenting. And yeah, look, I feel like I listen to my family a lot around any feedback they
Okay.
have on my stress levels, whether I'm displaying any signs of being overcommitted or
Yeah.
anything like that. And I tend to make adjustments, like it is actually pretty easy to just slow down my masters if I want to, or, or to look at the timing of things that I'm doing so that I don't end up in a spot where I'm running, just too many things at the same time.
Yeah, so I guess so. The theme that I'm sort of hearing with this is about how you need to be very mindful of your time management.
Mm.
I guess, does that force you to focus on what your priorities are? And, anything that's not really a priority, does that get parked for later on?
Yes, I think it's a very important what you like just having the confidence to say no to certain things.
Yeah,
So I'm very much a people pleaser, who has
yeah.
historically said yes to pretty much everything and every opportunity. And for a stage in my life when I was younger, that worked really well you know, um, the more I said yes to, the more I got outside my comfort zone, the more opportunities I had. And a lot of success came from being a yes person in a lot of ways because,
Yeah.
when you automatically say, yes, I'm in and work it out later, that's a bit of a Richard Branson strategy of like,
Yep.
entrepreneurs, we kind of pride ourselves on doing those things, and that worked really well for a while, but there did get a point when I realized it's just as important what I say no to.
Yep.
And I have a bit of a framework that I use to work out what I'm going to say yes to or no to in a particular year. I tend to do, annual planning where I've got a vision board. I'll have a word of the year. I have certain goals of what's most important to me, and that helps me decide what's important and what's not for
Mm,
the year ahead. And I revisit that every single year.
yeah. Actually, I really like that because as a recovering people pleaser myself, I think one of the gifts perhaps of menopause and
Mm,
perimenopause is that I'm probably setting more boundaries now than I used to. But I do agree with you. I think that say yes to the opportunity now and sort of work out the logistics later is
mm.
a good plan. But I'm liking your framework, and I think we've probably got a few listeners that would like the framework as well. So I guess to get back to that first point where we talked about your journey, and a lot of us have, or we find something, our why. It's something that
Mm.
drives us. Is there anything that in particular that is your driving force or your
Absolutely.
why?
Yeah, yeah. I think that the way that I realized and it kind of connected a lot of the decisions and I guess moves that I've made throughout my life was during the process of the Telstra Australian Young Business Women's Awards,
Hmm.
which was quite a few years ago, but I ended up being the national winner of the Young Businesswoman of the Year through that process.
Oh
And the
wow.
reason I share that is because it was the first time in my professional life where I had to explain to people outside of my industry why I cared so much about self-managed super funds, why I, was putting so many hours into it, why I specialized and why I got so passionate about it. Because rather than being within my industry, and being surrounded by people who all talk the same language, where I didn't have to explain anything, they were all
Yeah.
the same as me. But in that Telstra kind of environment where they were looking for female leaders and for us to share our personal stories, they took us through a process that was just like, why? Why? They just kept digging deeper and deeper. Like, what is within the deepest parts of your soul that maybe you're not even aware of? And so for me, it took me back to childhood memories of my grandparents and aunties and uncles and, just the people who I looked up to most in my life. And a lot of the stories I was hearing about them losing money
Mm.
through bad financial advice, financial crises, the stock market crashes, being forced into early retirement, potentially with health issues, and just like facing really scary times in terms of not having enough to, be able to do anything that they wanted to, or to be able to
Mm.
afford to plan anything, and just heaps of anxiety around money. Like that's what, just a scarce money
Yeah.
mindset.
Yep.
Um, and so that kind of formed like this whole like memory bank of challenges that and people that I loved that were being hurt in this area. And so it makes a lot of sense to me that although I didn't intend to, I just wanted to be an accountant. Like I didn't initially intend on being such an advocate for running your own super and, how early should you start and all those kinds of things. But it all was formed in my very, very early years. And that has been the driving purpose and motivation that has got me through so many challenges, like my own potential bankruptcy, when you're running a small
Oh,
business
wow.
and you're
Yep.
facing like growth and legislative change and all these kinds of things that can threaten a small business. I've had times when it would have just been way easier to walk away, to just fold up, give up, you know, I don't know, like skulk back into the shadows and not push myself to,
Yeah. Yeah.
to do like what it takes to actually, be successful and challenge yourself. So, um, that I think it's those times. It's not the successful times. It's the really challenging, humbling, almost failing times in your life where purpose is most important.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100% agree. And I think if I sort of think back to, when I was younger and people of my vintage, dare I say it, I grew up with, parents where the mother traditionally stayed at home and the father managed the money.
Mm,
So there was no real autonomy there. And
yeah.
I think you either fall into the pattern of following in their footsteps,
Mm,
or you go do a complete 180 and you want to be in control of your life and not be dictated to by somebody else. So yeah, that really resonates with me. And yeah, yeah. Well done.
thank you.
Well done. Um, Now, just going to sort of change tack slightly, and I know this is just to go back to in our pre-meet. You mentioned that you had some incredible stories about hitting really big goals while
Mm,
navigating stress fractures and weight gain and autoimmune challenges. Now, these are hurdles that a lot of female triathletes or sports people in general face
mm.
as they get older. And we don't always talk about those openly. I mean, we don't always talk about money or superannuation openly either. But could you share just one or two of those moments with us?
Yeah. So I guess if I start at the beginning of my triathlon journey, which was not that long ago, so I started in triathlon when I was 46 years old, and I was really desperate at that time for structure and challenge that I felt
Mm,
like I would be, I don't know, just something where I could be around people in a really healthy, environment,
yeah.
and
Yep.
just to be around women my age as well and see, like, I found triathlon amazing and so inspiring in terms of the ages of women that were out there on the course, throwing their bodies around like into this water and on bikes and doing all these things that I could not do at the time. I couldn't swim 25 meters. I couldn't ride a bike. I could barely run. But I saw these women aging so well,
Yep.
smiles on
Yep.
their faces, surrounded by friends, strong, and they had all different kind of body types, like, and that was such an eye opener for me because it expanded my thinking around aging well and, having a financially secure retirement, to think about, well, what will be my physical capability, like how am I looking after my body, my mental health, and just being able to physically do things as I got older as well, and how could I be a part of this as, a sport that also
Mm,
promoted longevity, particularly in women. When you're seeing grandmothers out there, on the course, like, oh my gosh, like seeing the age of some of the competitors on the Ironman stage and, at these
mm,
world championship events at all different distances. I just think it's unbelievable. And so that totally peaked, it totally spoke to my purpose again.
yeah. Yep.
So my initial challenges, starting at 46, were around facing absolute fear and anxiety over swimming, and not being able to breathe in the water, and just being absolutely embarrassed that I couldn't even swim 25 meters, like, and I needed to go and reach out to another adult and like have them witness my panic attacks and everything to try and teach me how to swim, because I was never going to get a triathlon done if I didn't know how to swim.
Yeah. Yep.
So I was highly motivated for the first time, probably, to show up and have someone else see me being so bad at something, like, and it's just been, so I think initially a big thing was just humility, like being able to be just really humble about where you're starting, and just suck it up when you fall off your bike and you're bleeding from your knees and you're making mistakes, and, like, and you're doing all the wrong things, but at least you're showing up and you're trying.
Yeah.
So I kind of,
I
yeah,
think they call that the courage to fail, don't they? So, and
yeah.
not care what other people
Not care what
think.
other people think. Yeah. I like struggled with a lot because in my field I was used to being this like highly, successful. I don't know, I was used to being in pretty much in control of my
Yep.
domain, and so to turn up and be like, "Oh my gosh, do I even belong here? Like how, like are people going to judge me for being so terrible?" That was challenging. My main strategy that worked really well there was to start calling myself a rookie,
Yep.
and I would just like kind of roll my eyes and laugh and be like, rookie mistake, rookie error, like, and that rookie mindset was really awesome in giving myself permission to be new and to be learning, and to just be out there racing for fun and for the learning experience, and to be with friends versus trying to get on podiums and smash PBs and feel like too much pressure to like do too many things all at once, basically. I
Yeah.
think
Hmm.
the other thing in terms of stress fractures, I guess, like that combining being a rookie at 46, and then extending my distances fairly quickly in a short amount of time. The one thing that I didn't, that no one really brought to my attention in those early stages, I was learning swim, bike, and run, but not how to eat properly. So nutrition was
Yeah.
really
Yep.
absent from the education for a new triathlete, which for a perimenopausal woman, is absolutely setting you up for a stress fracture, at least
Yeah.
one, if
Yep.
not many. So my nutrition plan was a joke, and I was just not eating enough. I didn't know what I was doing. And I got a stress fracture pretty, um, pretty early on. And yeah, I had like, it was quite shocking to me when that actually happened. I had a big training year ahead. When I got the stress fracture, I was pretty early into my training for my first ever half Ironman world champs in Marbella in Spain. And suddenly I'm dealing with this injury where I'm totally offloading, like on crutches, weight starts to lump on, like I feel like I'm going backwards, and you realize, this sport is not just I get fitter and fitter and fitter. Actually, at the same time I'm aging. at the same time, like injuries can happen and you're going to go backwards sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that puts a huge, mostly mental strain on on your like belief in yourself, that you can, like, I just lost total faith that I was going to be able to do that world championship race. I just, for the first time in my life, did not believe that I was going to be able to do it. And so it was a big year dealing with the mental challenges of an aging body that is also like being prioritized, like my
Yep.
recovery was a priority. I was educating myself on the things that I needed to avoid that situation again. But I had a lot of self-doubt and fear at the same time.
Yeah, so I think again I can sort of see a theme coming out here, and I think the first one's really important is that you're never too old to start anything new.
Mm,
I mean, starting triathlon at 46 is absolutely phenomenal, and sort of having that courage to be a beginner again, it just illustrates that if you can
mm,
do it, anyone else can. You just need the courage to start. I think the second thing that we do tend to forget if we're taking up a sport when we do get older is you need to fuel the engine. And I
yes.
think that's a legacy of sort of growing up with diet culture, where the pressure has always been, how you look to be thin, as opposed to fueling the body for sport to be functional.
Yes.
And it's interesting to see there seems to be a little bit of a shift. I'd like there to be more of a shift, and representation matters. So I think sort of communicating and getting that message out there is really really fantastic. So, and that's sort of a bit of a segue onto the next one. And so this is sort of stitching together quite nicely, and it's about you mentioned sort of uh, I'm going to say imposter syndrome, so I'm going to call it
Yeah.
imposter syndrome, and I think all of us have that to a degree. So even with all the success that you've had, and all those wonderful achievements that you've done, um, you have just said it, imposter syndrome. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I think I've never felt, I've never identified with imposter syndrome um, much in my life, I would say, until I started triathlon. So
Right.
before that,
Okay.
I think because so I always felt like in the accounting industry and finance industry that because I started so young, I was I felt like the industry gave me an opportunity to learn as a young person, that I was able to go to uni, become qualified. I had time to get all my qualifications and experience, and that was acceptable, that I had these levels that I was working through. And so I didn't actually, for a lot of my career, experience imposter syndrome because I genuinely knew I wasn't an imposter. I, had been given the opportunity to work through each level, within my industry. And when the time was right and when I was qualified and ready to be able to step up as a leader,
Yep.
and I'm very aware that that was just a gift, like that was just having having the gift of knowing what I wanted to do early in life, and working in an industry that enabled me to do that was fantastic. I think that's a lot harder now when you've got technology and AI and things, replacing juniors and younger people coming in. Like, I don't think people are given the time that I was back in the 90s. And so I think that's a real shame because I can see that if you're just dropped in the deep end and expected to go from zero to hero immediately, that to feel like an imposter would be pretty natural because you just haven't
Mm,
been given the time. In triathlon, I don't I don't think that it's imposter syndrome so that's affected me as much as just finding the right people. Like, I think the right people, when you're surrounded by the right people and you're with the right team and the right environment, that you'll get a sense of belonging and, that you're in the right place.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
tend to be more uncomfortable if I feel like, I'm surrounded by people that aren't welcoming and that are, for whatever reason threatened by you or, something else, which in actual fact tends to be driven by the fact that they have imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
when
Would
people are
agree.
threatened by you or feel the need to compete against you, that can often be a sign of their own issues and their own insecurities, and potentially that they feel like an imposter in some way. And that can be a damaging experience when you're around people like that, because they will take it out on you, look for reasons to bring you down, look for
Mm.
opportunities to isolate you or make comments that make you feel like you're not good enough or whatever. And probably the worst experience I had with that was around qualifying for World Championships in the Ironman 70.3, and just the way that the World Championships qualifiers happen with roll down and things.
Yep.
There's a lot of this stuff within the triathlon community that is like, do you deserve to be there? Have you earned it? If you got a roll down, um, like that's probably been my least favorite part, actually, of getting to know this whole community, is, when others are either jealous or feel like, maybe they deserve something that you didn't, and ultimately you get an opportunity and they didn't, for example, and you're made to feel bad for that in some way.
Mm. Yeah, I think so at the previous episode for this podcast we did on social connections and maintaining social connections sort of over the age of 45
Mm,
plus, and how important that was to mental well-being. And I guess it's about finding your tribe, and about hanging out with people who boost you up instead of want to take you
mm,
down a peg or two. That whole tall poppy syndrome thing.
totally.
So I think it's um, you're lucky to have found your tribe and it's had a positive impact on you. And I think in turn, you're also inspiring others, and you've got lessons there that you're imparting on the next generation. So you're also a member of the board of now AusTri. It's the Queensland branch, isn't it?
It
So
is, yeah.
yeah,
I'm on the board of Queensland Triathlon. So look, essentially, I didn't want to just take from triathlon,
yeah,
like I think it's important to give back in whatever way you can. And I was volunteering for, like, I volunteered at Ironman Australia and like a few, like Pink Triathlon, and, when I had the opportunity to give back as a volunteer. But my gut feel was, because of my capabilities, like I felt like I could do more, and I was attracted to getting involved at the governance level,
yep.
and to get to know the executive teams and the people within Oz Triathlon who are running this sport and making the decisions that impact all of us as triathletes as well. So I put my hand up for a few roles there, which has been great.
And that's a really good segue into the whole theme for this year's International Women's Day, which is Give to Gain. And I think you've sort of just covered that off nicely. I think once you get to that point where you have gained learning and knowledge and sort of
Mm,
courage and experience, that you do want to impart that on the next
on
generation. So this has been an absolute blast, Joe. And we're almost pretty well spot on time.
That's excellent.
So I really love the fact that you've shared your journey, and the themes that I'm getting are: one, you're never too old to try anything, and do it scared. Don't worry what anybody else thinks. But if you are going to take up an extreme sport like, triathlon, because that's where you find your tribe, make sure you're fueling for the journey.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I think with with those roles that I have with in terms of the leadership of triathlon, that that has been a big driver for me, is like it's not just the fueling side of things, and it's been really nice to see Triathlon's partnership with the dietitian now to
Yep.
roll that out to more members, dietitian approved, and that's fantastic. Um, but like athlete safety I think is so important. It's a big factor for triathletes to even be a member of Oz Triathlon. So making sure that we've got safe training environments,
Yep.
safe race environments, that there's good access to emergency equipment when is needed. Those types of things is what is driving me to hopefully be able to build some legacy within the sport of triathlon beyond, being a community member and a grandmother out there like trying to age well and have fun in the process
Yep.
kind of thing. Yeah. So I think as a female aging triathlete, who's in this sport for fun and friends, and or even if you're like a podium getting, like amazing athlete who's continuing to push their abilities like well into older years, being safe out there,
Yeah.
training on the roads,
Yeah.
swimming in
Yep.
open
Yep. Yep.
water,
Yep.
like and making sure that, the triathlon community is looking after its athletes is for me such a vital element of making the sport better and more accessible, and something that people can do for the long term.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Joe. I'm going to ask for if you had one piece of parting advice to the listeners,
Mm.
what would that be?
I think it's to back yourself.
Yeah.
Actually, it is one of the, like backing myself has been one of the most fundamental things that has enabled me to make bigger decisions in my life and make bigger changes. And so, you know, I always say, like, if you invest in yourself first and you believe in yourself, then you're inviting others to invest in you and believing in you. So the best thing you can do is be making sure that you're giving yourself time to think, to plan, to be healthy and have enough sleep, and then be
Yeah.
able to do things for yourself. And then when others see that, they will back you as well.
Yeah. That's fantastic. All right. Thanks for joining us today, Joe, and I will chat to you again soon.
Thanks, Kate. Really appreciate it. And happy International Women's Day.
Thank you. What a powerful reminder from Joe about the importance of backing yourself. First, so that others have the invitation to do the same. From her work helping families secure their financial futures to her dedication to making the triathlon community safer and more accessible, Joe's journey is a testament to the fact that we don't have to choose between professional excellence and personal fulfillment. I love her takeaway that the best investment you can make is in your own health, planning, and belief in your own abilities. If you're feeling that inner critic voice today, remember Joe's advice. Give yourself the time to think, plan, and then move forward with the evidence of everything that you've already achieved. Thank you so much for listening, and a very happy International Women's Day to all our listeners. We'll see you in the next episode.